The morning sun slanted through the tall glass windows of Liberty National Bank, scattering golden reflections across the polished marble floor. The lobby was alive with the shuffle of papers, the rhythmic click of heels, and the occasional sigh from customers waiting their turn. The branch had been open only 30 minutes, but already a line of clients stretched from the counter toward the entrance. Some clutched paycheck envelopes, others carried deposit slips, and a few stared blankly at their phones, killing time in the long wait. At the far end of the room stood Carl Henderson, the branch manager. His reputation in the bank wasn't one of kindness. To the outside world, he looked the part of success, a tall man in a fitted gray suit. His black shoes shined so much they could have served as mirrors. His dark hair was slicked back, and his crimson tie was knotted tight, a deliberate show of control. But behind that polished exterior lurked a man obsessed with hierarchy. He believed people fell into two categories: important clients, and time wasters. The wealthy businessmen who strode in with Rolex watches and fat portfolios earned his respect. But the elderly, the poor, or anyone who looked like they lived paycheck to paycheck. To Carl, they were invisible at best, annoyances at worst. That morning, his mood was unusually sharp. The coffee machine in the break room had sputtered out a bitter brew, his assistant had called in sick, and the regional director had emailed a thinly veiled threat about quarterly performance. By the time the line moved forward and an elderly man stepped up, Carl was primed to vent his irritation. The man couldn't have been more different from the VIP clients Carl worshipped. He was dressed simply, dark slacks that hung a little loose, a pale blue shirt tucked neatly but worn from years of washing, and a faded cap pulled low over his brow. His back was slightly bent, and though his hands trembled faintly, there was something steady, dignified about the way he placed them on the counter. "Good morning," the old man said softly, his voice carrying the gentle rasp of age. "I'd like to check my balance, please." It was a simple request, the kind tellers fulfilled dozens of times a day without fuss. But Carl, overhearing from behind the counter, couldn't resist inserting himself. He strode forward, his polished shoes clicking on the floor, and leaned against the counter with a smirk plastered across his face. "Your balance." Carl's tone dripped with mockery. "At your age, sir, shouldn't you already know whether you're broke or not?" A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. One woman in line frowned, another shifted awkwardly, and a young mother hugged her child closer, whispering something reassuring in his ear as though shielding him from the rudeness. The tellers behind the counter glanced nervously at each other, their hands frozen over keyboards. They knew Carl's sharp tongue well, but this, mocking a customer, was reckless even for him. The old man, however, didn't flinch. He didn't snap back or look away in shame. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and gave Carl a small, almost amused smile. "Well," the man said evenly, "I've got a proposal for you. If you show me I have a balance, I'll pay you double your salary this week." The words landed like a stone tossed into a still pond. Silence spread across the lobby. Even the rhythmic hum of the printer paused, as though the machines themselves were curious. Carl's smirk deepened, and a condescending laugh burst out of him. "Double my salary? Sir, do you even realize what you're saying? I don't think you understand how banks work." He tapped his chest with exaggerated pride. "I'm not some low-level teller. I manage this entire branch. Do you have any idea how much I make?" The man's expression didn't change. His eyes, sharp but kind, rested calmly on Carl, unshaken by the arrogance. Carl puffed out his chest, his voice rising loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "I make 6 figures. More in 1 year than you've probably seen in your lifetime. And you're standing here, wasting my time, making jokes about doubling my salary." He shook his head and chuckled again. "Tell me, old man, do you even have $10 in your account?" 20. Gasps and murmurs stirred among the customers. A middle-aged man whispered under his breath, "That's out of line," while another customer shifted uncomfortably, clearly embarrassed for the way the manager was speaking. But Carl ignored them, basking in the moment as though humiliating this man made him taller. The old man placed a steady hand on the counter. His fingers, veined and worn, didn't tremble this time. "So you won't check my balance?" Carl rolled his eyes. "Why should I? You're bluffing. You probably opened a tiny savings account years ago and never touched it. Look, you're holding up the line. I've got real clients waiting, people with serious money. Why don't you step aside and stop wasting my staff's time?" Still, the man didn't react. He didn't storm off, didn't argue. He just repeated in the same calm tone, "I'll say it once more, I'll pay you double if you show me I have a balance." Carl let out a booming laugh, making sure it echoed across the marble lobby. "Do you hear this, everyone? He'll pay me double. That's rich. Next thing, you'll tell me you own the bank itself." A few nervous chuckles surfaced from customers who didn't want to be caught in the crossfire, but most remained quiet, their eyes darting between Carl and the old man. Behind the counter, a young teller bit her lip, her hands fidgeting on the keyboard. She knew something Carl didn't, or perhaps something he'd forgotten. Her heart raced as she recognized the man beneath the humble clothes, the face she'd seen in framed photos at corporate meetings, on glossy annual reports, and in company newsletters. She leaned slightly forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Henderson, you might want to check his account." But Carl waved her off, too drunk on his own arrogance to notice the urgency in her tone. "Check his account? For what? So we can all laugh at a $5 balance? Forget it. I run this place. I decide who deserves my attention, and right now, this," he gestured dismissively toward the old man, "isn't worth it." The air grew heavier, thick with anticipation. Customers exchanged uneasy glances. Some wanted to defend the old man, others were simply curious how far Carl would go. And through it all, the old man remained calm, his eyes steady, his faint smile almost as if he knew something Carl didn't. What Carl couldn't see, what everyone else was beginning to suspect, was that this was no ordinary man. Beneath the faded cap and humble demeanor stood Robert Ellington, the CEO of Liberty National Bank, the very man whose name appeared on every employee's paycheck. And in that quiet moment, as the lobby held its breath, Carl's arrogance teetered on the edge of a cliff, ready to collapse under the weight of truth. The lobby was silent except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Customers stood frozen in line, unsure whether to look at the old man with curiosity or at Carl Henderson, whose smirk still lingered, though cracks were beginning to show. The young teller, her hands trembling, tried once more. "Sir, please, just check his account." Carl scoffed. "What's the matter with you? Don't tell me you've bought into this nonsense. He's just an old man with nothing better to do. If I waste company time on every joker who walks in here, we'll never get real work done." The old man's calm eyes flicked toward the teller, and he gave her the smallest nod of reassurance. Then, with slow and deliberate motion, he reached up and removed his faded cap. Gasps rippled through the room. The silver hair, the sharp yet kind features, the unmistakable face that adorned the framed photographs in every branch of Liberty National Bank, it was him. "Mr. Ellington," the teller whispered, almost reverently. The name spread like wildfire across the lobby. Customers murmured in disbelief, tellers straightened in their chairs, and a security guard near the door snapped to attention. Even those who hadn't recognized the face immediately knew the name. Robert Ellington, CEO of Liberty National Bank. Carl's smirk collapsed instantly. His mouth opened, but no words came. His face drained of color, leaving him pale and clammy. He stumbled back a step, suddenly aware that the man he had mocked, insulted, and dismissed was the very person who had built the institution he worked for. Robert Ellington let the silence hang for a moment, his presence commanding without a raised voice. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm but resonant enough that every person in the room felt the weight of his words. "Mr. Henderson," Robert began, "when a customer walks into this bank, any customer, they deserve respect. Whether they hold $100 or $100 million. That's the foundation this company was built on." Carl stammered, his voice cracking. "Sir, I didn't realize, if I had known." Robert raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "Exactly. You didn't know. And that is precisely the problem. You assumed. You judged. You looked at a man's clothes, his age, and decided his worth before you ever bothered to look at his account." The crowd shifted, nodding subtly, some crossing their arms, others watching Carl with thinly veiled disgust. Robert continued, his words slow and deliberate. "I built Liberty National Bank on one principle above all others, trust. Trust that when a person walks through these doors, they will be treated with dignity. Not mocked, not belittled, not turned away." Carl's knees wobbled, his hands fidgeting nervously with the hem of his jacket. Sweat trickled down his temple. "Mr. Ellington, please, I didn't mean." But Robert didn't let him finish. He turned to the young teller instead. "Would you kindly print my balance statement?" The teller nodded quickly, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The printer whirred to life, spitting out a sheet of paper. She handed it to Robert with both hands, as though presenting something sacred. Robert glanced at the paper, then placed it gently on the counter for everyone to see. The numbers on the page were staggering, 9 figures, more money than most people could dream of in 100 lifetimes. Gasps filled the lobby once again. Carl's mouth hung open. His arrogance had evaporated, leaving nothing but fear. Robert folded the slip neatly, tucked it into his shirt pocket, and looked Carl straight in the eye. His voice was soft, but each word struck like a hammer. "I told you I'd pay you double if you showed me I had a balance. Unfortunately for you, respect isn't something that can be bought. And you, Mr. Henderson, are bankrupt in that regard." A heavy silence fell again, thicker than before. The tellers avoided Carl's gaze, customers shook their heads, and the young mother in line hugged her child tighter, whispering, "That's what respect looks like." Robert straightened, his dignity radiating through the room. "Consider this your last day managing this branch. Effective immediately." Carl's eyes widened in panic. "Sir, please. This job, my career." Robert cut him off, his voice firm. "A career built on arrogance will always collapse. You've been given responsibility, and instead of leading with humility, you chose to belittle the very people who keep this bank alive. That is not leadership, it is failure." The security guard stepped closer, though Robert did not ask him to. The unspoken order was clear. Carl's lips quivered, but no words came. He looked around desperately for sympathy, but found only cold stares and averted eyes. The customers he once considered nobodies now looked at him with quiet satisfaction, while the employees who had endured his cruelty finally saw justice unfold before them. Robert turned to the lobby at large. His voice softened, no longer addressing Carl but everyone present. "Let this be a lesson, not just for today, but for every day. Wealth is not measured by numbers on a balance sheet. True wealth lies in how we treat one another. Respect costs nothing, but arrogance can cost you everything." The words echoed in the high-ceilinged lobby, sinking deep into the hearts of everyone present. Customers began to clap softly, their applause growing louder, until the entire room resounded with it. Tellers smiled, some even wiping away tears, their relief palpable. Carl, red-faced and humiliated, slunk toward the door with the weight of his downfall pressing heavily on his shoulders. No one stopped him. No one wished him well. His reign of arrogance had ended. Meanwhile, Robert placed his cap back on his head, the humble garment that had hidden the identity of a man of immense power. He gave the young teller a reassuring smile and a nod of gratitude. Then he turned to leave, his steps slow, steady, and dignified. The customers parted like a sea, not because of fear, but out of respect, real, earned respect. As the glass doors swung shut behind him, the lesson lingered in the air: you never know who stands before you. So treat everyone with the respect they deserve. Check mark moral of the story. Respect is free, but arrogance can cost you your career, your reputation, and your dignity. Always treat people with kindness, you never know who they really are.